Congresswoman Davis has been in Congress since 2003. She has represented California, initially the 49th District, and currently the 53rd District. The committees that she serves on are the Committee of Armed Services and the Committee on Education and Workforce. And as a result, she has first-hand understanding of STEM education, both from an educational perspective as well as a national security perspective, and I think that's critically important. I think when we talk about STEM, oftentimes we think about it just in terms of education, but it has serious national security implications. Before serving in the U.S. House of Representatives, she served in the California State Assembly, so she is a public servant and has served her people in California and the United States with distinction. So I bring to the podium Congresswoman Susan Davis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. And so it says, it almost looks like a San Diego day out there. I always like to remind my colleagues of that. And now and then I remember listening to NPR one morning and they basically said, oh, this is going to be a San Diego day. So always identified with that. No, it's really a pleasure to be here. And I want to thank the Committee for Economic Development for inviting me to be here as well. And just picking up very quickly on the comment that Mike made, I think that we are always trying to say that education is a national security issue. After all, we have to be sure that the men and women who we educate today are able to join the services. And some of you may know, less than 1% of our country actually serves in the military today. And there are a number of people who want to serve, but aren't able to serve because their educational background is not strong enough. We have to be reminded of that all the time. And of course, the STEM fields, people who have been active in the STEM fields and go into the military are treasures because they actually are making decisions based on their interest in our national security, but knowing that they're going to be going into harm's way, but also that they're probably not going to be doing as well as if they went into the private sector. And so we have to be sure that we're inspiring people to feel that their skills and their interests are going to be used well when they go into public service and certainly in the military. So it's very, very important to that. And now and then we have our situation, as we do in the Congress right now, where we want to put money into national security, but we're often willing to borrow from education to do that. Doesn't make sense. They just trying making a political statement here, just trying to make political statements, but it's really a concern and it should be. And I think that you are just in such the right position to continue to make those arguments about how important it is to invest in our young people. We need to do that, and national security is one really big reason that we have to do that. I was asked to speak about the importance of STEM. I know that everybody out in the audience certainly understands how crucial investments in STEM education and innovation are. And we really have come a long way. And I have to tell you, I mentioned to my staff, Armida here, that I looked out in the room and I saw so many women. And I was going to share with you that when I went to school, and I went to school in Northern California. Some of you may be familiar with Richmond, which is in the Bay Area, but not exactly an exemplary area for schools. Near Berkeley, which you would hope that it would be, but certainly not in the Richmond school system. And I did not have any female teachers in the fields of math or science. Fortunately, that's changed a lot. I remember that my kids actually did. But I was one of those kids who wasn't getting math or science terribly quickly and had teachers who would tap me on the shoulder. I remember this one day and said, "Oh, that's okay. Dear. Don't worry about it. You don't need this. Different. Someone else will take care of it." And I talked to some of my friends now and then about that. I happened to be at a reunion recently from high school, and we all kind of had the same experience. Nobody felt that was something that they wanted to do, and we certainly didn't have, teachers who looked like me at that time who were encouraging me to really explore more, to not be worried about it, to just relax and try and enjoy learning math and science. And I'm so glad that that's different today, and I suspect some of you have those experiences. I think the reason we need to do that is as we all know, I mean, you can't really be what you can't see. And so for young people today, when they have role models, and sometimes they're even on television. I think of Gwen Eichel today in NPR, who has inspired so many young women in the fields of journalism, that we need to remember that always when we're thinking about where young people are coming from, and keeping the Stanfield certainly as inclusive as possible. And sometimes that really does have to be very purposeful in the way that we do that. It's just important. Many years ago, I was able to lead a program for high school students that was supported by the Price family in San Diego. What we know is Costco today, but the Price family actually started Price Club. And they lost a young man to brain cancer and started a program to do something that they thought that he would have enjoyed, which began with students in their freshman summer through high school, exploring the world about them in a very different way that a lot of programs had been able to do at that time. And we knew that we were going to be bringing in young people from throughout the city. Every high school would have a few students who would apply and be able to come. And that merging of students who were coming from, quite honestly, pretty affluent areas to those who had been homeless was very important. Sometimes we tend to, in programs, be directing it at maybe low-income students, but then we don't really include the entire mix. So we had such a range of children with so many different backgrounds, obviously ethnicities, and then I thought, in order to have facilitators that would work with these young people, we had to be very purposeful about the way we did that, and it worked, actually, and it made for a very successful program. I think if we had not done that, I'm just not sure they would have been able to contribute in the same way. So it's critical in Stanfield, it's critical in life generally, to be sure that we try and do that. I know that teachers need support and training from industry leaders so they can take their knowledge back to students. A lot of the programs that I understand that you're all involved in do this. And what I saw in San Diego, particularly with Qualcomm, was the opportunity to take over a period of a week young people into the labs and have them working in the labs and bringing in people from the industry, from business. And they didn't just bring the students, and these are middle school students, just right into this lab. They were preparing the teachers all the way in order for them to be able to translate before they did this experience what the experience was going to be. But then the important thing is the continuity after. So it's not a one-shot deal, and I don't know enough about all the programs that you're having, but I want to encourage you to do that and to share that with others, because we need to be sure that we're not putting forth what is a great effort and then just letting it fall. It's so easy for teachers to become distracted and move on to the next area that they have to teach. But if they themselves are enthusiastic and have embedded in the program, in the industry long enough, and sometimes a week can be sufficient, to really get a feel so that whatever they do moving forward really heightens that experience for young people, then I think we're all going to be much better off. The industries will be better off. They'll have a better workforce. And of course, our kids will be excited and they'll be thinking as they move forward of that experience, as a young person and what that experience might have done for them later on. Those are things that are really, really critical. Getting that first-hand look is so important. So I think that you've all been looking at that and you've been working on those programs, and I just want to applaud you for that. The other thing we know is that many of our communities today are leery in some cases of making investments in STEM fields because they don't know enough about them, and they may not have had as much encouragement really in trying to retrain people from their communities in STEM fields. I think if this election has shown us anything, we know that there are many communities that are concerned about the loss of traditional labor jobs. That's clear. We talk about the Rust Belt, but it's not just in the Rust Belt that that's true. And they often feel that their concerns have not been heard by Washington, and I also think that's true. So we really have a responsibility to convey to Americans that changes in technology shouldn't be seen as a threat to their jobs, but as an opportunity to retrain in newer fields that hold incredible potential. We have to make sure that we're providing a cushion for people as they retrain in these fields so that they're not worried about their family's finances. I think just going back very quickly, we know we've had a number of discussions about trade, and it's clear that when we think about trade adjustments assistance, we probably haven't done as much in that area as was possible. And we need to think about that in the future. I think we're not going to be seeing some of those issues come up. Certainly not in this lame duck session. But nevertheless, we need to be thinking about that. And I think you all have a lot to contribute to that so that people are really recognizing that there is a risk here. Absolutely, there's a risk. But we have to mitigate that, and we have to find ways that people feel that their lives are purposeful. And we all know that people aren't going to feel that way if they're not able to produce for their family and provide their children with a stable future. And that's really, I think, at the heart of many of the discussions that we're having. The other thing that's really critical, and this may be something that I focused on quite a bit, and I think often we don't think about it as much, or we don't really identify it. I think you think about it, we don't necessarily identify it, are those soft skills that our students need so that the technology changes that are occurring in their lives, they're able to adapt to. We all need that. I certainly laugh, and I'm sure you all do, that your grandkids, if you have grandchildren, some of you may, that they actually are so confident and so fluid when it comes to technology, when we're still, struggling a little bit. You have to hand them something and ask them to do it for you. We're all struggling with that to a certain extent, different from all the millennials out there. And so we need to help people adapt, but at the same time, we need to emphasize communication and creative thinking skills. How do you get those? Where do those come from? Where does that well-rounded education that we hope that every young person leaves at least high school with, that they're able to go out and be able to really be part of something bigger than themselves and feel that they have some persuasive abilities to be able to articulate their positions when they want to do that. Sometimes we know people shy away from doing that because they're just not comfortable. So how do we do that? How do we make sure that they're ready to do that? And I know that companies often speak about the fact that they would rather have a new hire that can learn quickly and communicate effectively than one that has a number of technical skills. Yeah, the technical skills are important, but we hear that from businesses all the time. And quite frankly, they're a little frustrated that our school system has not been able to do that. I'm asking you to, help us with that so that as we think about what we need to do, especially when we're talking about career and technical skills, but others as well, what do you see that is a gap sometimes, and how can we address that? We'd like to think that we're teaching in our own families and in many different ways, whether it's in Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, what have you, other, I think, extracurricular activities that young people have. But there is a need to try and communicate those skills and teach them. Partly it's resiliency skills as well. The ability to feel that after you've had a bad day, that you can come back and not be suffering from that. So schools can teach that, and we do have many communities across the country that are working very hard at doing this far better. I know that you're going to be participating in a STEM discussion later this morning, and maybe that's a question that you can address there as well. And part of it is, how do we teach technology when it's constantly changing? One of the answers that we've come to time and again in thinking about how we do a better job in this country, and we know that we're not at the top of industrial countries in math and science. We're nowhere near the top actually right now. How do we make sure that our teachers are key to teaching those life skills, and certainly the academic curriculums effectively? Beyond all the bills and regulations, the success of an individual student comes down to what? Often it's the quality of the individual teacher. And so we need to work on elevating the teaching profession so that we can attract effective STEM educators. Other countries, Japan and Germany and others, actually have been more effective at that than we are. And the teaching profession there, many of you know this, is viewed as critical to the community. It's teachers are elevated in such a way that we talk about the best and the brightest who are thinking about their futures. They're thinking about teaching because they know that they can succeed and that they can have a very rewarding life as a result of being in the teaching profession. And I think when we go to colleges today, even when we talk to high school students when they're leaving, it's not usual to find a lot of students in a room that are thinking about being teachers. And how we support teachers is part of the reason for that, but there are a lot of other reasons as well. I remember when I was on the school board in San Diego, this is many, many years ago, we were working on budget issues and cutting budgets as school boards have to do all the time, and we had certainly in those days had an influx of refugees. I remember a charming gentleman who came to speak to us, at this hearing, and you can imagine that in many cases we had people who were a little more accustomed, I think, to speaking perhaps publicly, and he was very dear, and I can see him today. And he came up and he said, there's something, in speaking in pretty broken English, but there's something I don't really understand in this country. He said, where I came from in the village, the school was the most important building in my village. It was built better than any other building. It had decoration that was different from some of the other buildings. We knew it was important. He said, but in this country, he said, the buildings I see that are the most impressive are big banks. And my children's school looks terrible. It looks like it's been abandoned. That always struck me as something that we need to remember for how our young people as well perceive the institutions that educate them, that they must be the most important buildings in their neighborhood. that also says something about the way our young people think about where they want to go work someday. And when society says this is, financial sector, and a lot of you are in the financial sector, is the most important place in our community, then maybe they're not thinking that they want to be part of the educational institutions in their neighborhoods either. So we have to beware of that. We have to invest, and we need to make sure that our education system is elevated, as is the profession in our own country. I think for our part in Congress, we're hopeful that STEM education might be one area where Democrats and Republicans certainly can work together to ensure that our students will be globally competitive. We were hoping actually that the reauthorization of the Higher Education Act and Head Start could be reauthorized in the next few months, but I'm not sure right now exactly how that's going to move forward. But we certainly want to keep talking about the need to do that. It's difficult to see how the committee itself will be impacted. I certainly believe, and I'm sure everybody in this room believes, that education should not be a partisan issue. But you may be aware that there are different emphases that people bring to the table, whether it's only supporting charter schools, not thinking as much about how we work in communities that are seeing a lack of affordability in many of their institutions. Those are differences that are apparent, and we need to come together and we need to talk about common ground, how we can make sure that all children are educated to the highest that their potential brings them, and that's something that we have to be sure that everybody is thinking about in the same way. We know today that one of the real difficulties that students are having in terms of student loans is, and I asked someone the other day who works in this field, what's the predictability factor for young people who have large debt? Well, maybe no surprise, for-profit institutions tend to drive more higher debt among young people. But we haven't done as good a job, we're doing better now, in providing young people the information that they need to know where some of the best investments in education are. And so a lot of young people today, and even more so in our veterans community, are kind of driven into programs that seem easier initially to get into, and that might provide more specific focus on what they want to do as their career, but at the same time put them in so much debt that the possibility of owning a home, even of getting married, seems like far off for a lot of these kids, and that's something that we're seeing, and I think it's something that certainly we as a whole need to address that issue for people today. So I think sometimes we do disagree on specifics of education policy, but making certain that students have a pathway to successful careers, what could be more important? We need to focus on that for sure. I think there have been some signals that we can do some of that as we move forward, and I certainly hear, whether you're coming from the Bernie Sanders camp or even the Donald Trump camp, that people know that this is an area that might actually bring more people together than some of the other concerns that we have today. I wanted to close by just mentioning to you, and again, I know that everybody in this room must think of these issues all the time, to continuing to invest in STEM education and thinking about what it is in the areas that you're working in that will teach us how to bring depth to some of the best practices that we have in these programs. Often we go forward and with every intent, I think, of evaluating a whole host of areas within our programs. But sometimes that gets a little lost in translation for one reason or another. What happens then is that those of us who are working very hard to convince our colleagues to invest in a certain data development or program, to invest in some grants so that communities can make their decisions about what they think is important, and opening it up and really being sure that that's possible. If we can have enough data-driven information, then we can sell that a lot easily. I often talk to people about programs and ask them, well, what are the key things that you found out, and what really surprised you? What did students key in on that you might not have thought was possible? And they say, that we didn't think about it early enough. We didn't build it into our model, this kind of evaluation. So we're actually able to see in the end that there were some reasons why this was a really good idea. We need to do more of that. I encourage you to do it. Some of you may have great stories about what you are doing, and I think to share that with your colleagues would be very, very important. I remember even going back to that program that I did with the Price family, that we didn't do as much in the beginning as we'd like, but we did try and create an evaluation piece. And it was very, very interesting, because things that intuitively I might have thought went well or not so well, we actually asked students about, and they were able to respond really pretty succinctly, and they were very, very frank and honest about what worked for them and what didn't. And then we were able to act on them in the future. I think it's the same with all these programs. Some things are going to resonate more than others. And often when we have the kind of continuity, we build the relationships between the people that are demonstrating their skill and trying to help young people relate to that. The extent to which they connect with the young people in those programs really makes a difference going forward. And they don't, young people, as we know, they don't forget that relationship. So trying to figure out what is it about what we're doing that makes that connection. It's not always easy to evaluate, but I would certainly encourage you to try and do that. We know that STEM not only benefits our education system, it obviously benefits our national and our global economy. You're at the forefront of that. And I know that this conference for all of you will bring about those good big ideas and the ability to be able to think about where your experiences fit into the experience of others and how we can build on what really makes sense to young people today. Thank you all so much. I appreciate your participation, and I encourage you, please, whatever it is that you take away from this and other experiences that you've had in your work every day, let us know about that, because it may be that we can define and refine some of the work that we're doing. I wish we were doing more in this area that will really make a difference. Thanks so much.